Hey, what's up, guys? It's Reed Young, aka Shuda here. I'm going to be reviewing a deep stacked 50 cent $1 hand for you guys. A lot of you guys have been commenting that you like the deep stack videos, so here we go with another one for you. Speaking of which, Rake Me Hard PM'd me this hand on 2+2, so I thought I'd take a look at it for him and put it in the YouTube channel just for him and also for you guys. So let me know if you have a hand you want me to review. I'm happy to do it. Happy to throw it in here. Just a quick side note, I put an annotation at the top of this video for instructions on entering a retweet contest that I'm doing on Twitter. And if you guys don't know what a retweet contest is, basically what I'm doing is giving away something. I'm giving away a copy of my book, which is currently selling for $997. LOL pricing, but if you guys want a shot at winning that, I'm asking for 200 retweets total. We're at 150 already, so if you want to check out the video that shows you how to play, basically it just says all you need to do is go on Twitter and find me at Shuda with 3 A's at the end of it, and retweet one of the tweets that says retweet this to enter into the contest drawing. So you'll be good to go after that. So back to this hand. Going over our reads on our opponent, he normally plays a little bit higher stakes, so he plays the next limit up. He doesn't, Rake Me Hard really doesn't go into whether or not playing deep stacked here is going to affect his gameplay that much. Deep stacked 51 cent could be very similar to a 1-2 game if the deep stack game is playing fairly aggressively. If you guys look at the other stacks on the table, no one else is full stack, so I'm just assuming this is like a god table and everyone's just loving life who's playing at this table. So onto the hand, we are 217 big blinds effective with the villain. He is on the cutoff, we're under the gun, we raised $3. A middle position player calls, we expect him to have a wide and mostly speculative calling range here. The cutoff squeezes us to a decent size. I think it's fine considering that the middle position player is only 100 big blinds effective with this, and he's in position, so it really doesn't matter much for him what happens pre-flop because he doesn't want to risk a ton to try to take it down, especially when the middle position player can back raise shove, and if he has a really wide squeezing frequency here, he's going to get exploited by someone back raising basically any pocket pair here. So you want to watch out for that if you're in the cutoff shoes. But the one of the issues that Rake Me Hard raises here is, should he be 4-betting queens pre-flop? And I don't think so against, the average 50 cent $1 player, and especially deep stacked. And that's because his 3-betting range is going to be extremely polarized. A lot of people, even 100 big blinds effective, won't be squeezing jacks here for value. And, it's not necessarily a mistake against certain players just because we don't really expect to see like the average 51 player going wild with like 10s in our position. But when you're against like better competition who understand the math of the situation, 10s go way up in value because the pre-flop aggression meets the situation a little bit more accurately. So our response is less of an exploitive one, i.e. we might want to be going with a hand like 10s pre-flop, expecting to get 5-bet bluff shoved on some of the time and to see some, maybe pocket 9s or something like that, ace-queen that we do pretty well against, instead of flatting and trying to play like a tricky pot out of position. It also balances the times that we want to try to 4-bet bluff. So you got to think about all these different things, all these different dynamics that are in flux. If we can make an exploitive adjustment against someone, then, that's going to be the best play. I mean, by definition, if we have a read on someone, we can make a better play than what would be, game theory optimal. And instead of kind of playing blindfolded, we know what to do. So the whole point of, game theory, of course, is to get a better understanding of situations where you can't outguess people. But since we can pretty much outguess everyone at 50 cent $1, we know what to do here, and we're going to be flatting. I think if you 4-bet and get 5-bet, you're going to be up against a range that's polarized to hands that annihilate you, i.e. kings and aces, or hands he's going to be folding to our 6-bet shove. So while 5-bet bluffing can be good, and we definitely want to balance it if we do intend on making the play as a bluff, I don't think queens are going to do well enough for value against the average 50-cent $1 player, even one who's used to playing 200 no limit, which is the next limit up from us right now. I think he's not just, he might be a little bit more splashy, but I would expect to see that manifested in a lighter squeezing range and not necessarily in a light 5-betting range. So if we do 4-bet, I don't think we're going to be 5-bet bluffed often enough to justify shoving and running into kings or aces and losing like a 220 big blind pot that way. So all that said, we decide to flat. The middle position player also flats. He probably has a pretty speculative range in general of like medium pocket pairs. Some Broadway hands, probably fewer of those, and some suited connectors. I would expect if the middle position player had like jacks or tens to see a back race preflop a lot of the time, just because we could be flatting the preflop re-raisers, the cutoffs, squeeze so often. And that's because our implied odds could be ridiculous. So if the cutoffs range is super polarized, then we can flat a lot of hands like eights, hope to hit a set, and then stack aces and kings, or maybe check call some flops and try to see if we can get to a showdown against his bluffing range. So all that said, we decided to flat queens preflop. I think it's also good because middle position could back raise a hand like that, and then the cutoff, who might have something like ace queen offsuit or ace jack suited, might just decide to go with it and try to isolate the middle position back raiser and get us to fold, a wide range of hands, something like nines, that his hand doesn't do that well against or it's racing against. So that way he forces us into like a fundamental theorem of poker mistake. He forces us to fold a hand that has great equity against his hand and needs love and life. So if we flat hands like queens with the intention of calling a shove in that scenario, we could potentially get a ton of money in preflop very good. So I don't think flatting is like the end of the world here. I do think it's probably a bit of an exploitive adjustment, and against a really good player, you want to be 4-betting queens a lot of the time. But since we don't expect this dude to be super balanced on the cutoff, we can just go ahead and flat, and then hopefully we get some extra EV from the middle position player back raising a bit too often, not knowing that we're flatting hands like queens here as well. So on the flop, we check, middle position checks, and the cutoff bet's half pot. I think it's a fine bet size. He could easily get stacks in by the river. If you guys are checking out the rest of the hand, you can see he does just that. Not a great flop for us, because if he has something like ace king and kings are better, then we're actually not doing that great against his range. Ace king has something like 36, 37% equity depending on the suits, and kings and aces obviously have us smoked. So check calling the flop is fine. Obviously we don't want to be folding every single hand in our range, queens being about the top of it. And I'm not really sure he value bets jacks or plays jacks preflop this way, given the deep stacks. Like we said, we expect him to be pretty polarized. So I would check call the flop, but be pretty wary about future action. I don't think that many people at 50-cent $1 are going to continue to barrel on the turn and then on the river. So we could flat the flop and expect the turn and the river bets to be kind of disproportionately strong, in that he's going to give up very often with bluffing on the turn and river, but be able to value bet fairly effectively because our range is, pretty much face up, is something like, eights. Really, like I would say the bulk of it would be, pocket pairs that aren't sets, just because it's tougher to make sets, if the card's already on the board. So he's really looking at like fives through queens a lot of the time, and it's pretty easy for him to value bet thinly and successfully against that with any other one pair hand like kings or aces. So on the cutoff, I wouldn't really mind a check fold, honestly. It's just kind of a crappy situation where we have terrible reverse implied odds against what's very likely just an extremely tight range. Also, it might be worth noting that he bet 45. Sometimes when people type out their bet, it means something specific. But if you guys are checking it out, 45 is exactly half the pot. So maybe you just press the half pot shortcut button. That could also mean something. But if we don't know, I would lean towards it potentially meaning comfort, i.e. a good hand in this situation. And I think it probably just adds to the strength of his range just a little bit. So I think check calling the turn is okay, and at 50 cents a dollar, I couldn't fault you at all for folding the river. Calling would be fine. From a game theory standpoint, I'm sure calling is the best play, in that we need to be calling hands this strong in order to avoid exploitation. But exploitively in 51, I don't think people are going to be three-barreling you enough to exploit you for folding a hand like queens here. So we counter-exploit someone with a tight value range on the river, or with a tight range, on the river, made up of only value by folding super strong hands like this. So let me know if you guys would make this fold, if you'd make it on the turn, or if you'd make it on the river at all, in the comment section. If you guys want to hit me up on Twitter for a chance to win that book, we're going to be drawing at 200 retweets, so should be pretty soon now. And I will talk to you guys soon.